Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about this whole idea that's become popular again on YouTube, that there isn't any such thing as overtraining, or even worse, that overtraining is a positive thing and something that you need to do. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. This has gotten bigger in the last couple of years. Originally, there was a guy, and he got really upset, and people were like, oh my God, why is this, you picking on him? This guy had come up and said that he really was into exercise science, and he was talking about overtraining, but it turned out that he actually didn't know what overtraining was, that he was confusing high-frequency training, which is something that scientists have studied for decades now. Some of the top level lifters in the world have used ultra high frequency training to where they're squatting for maxes 3 times a day, 6 days a week. People have won gold medals in the Olympics doing this. This is an understood phenomenon. And he was calling that overtraining, and it was really confusing to me until I realized, oh, this guy's reading bodybuilding magazines. That's where he's getting this. He's not reading science at all. And I kind of made fun of that. And then, the guy actually had made a video and got upset. I think his name was Megan or something. And I don't know if he's still around on YouTube or not. But that was my first encounter with this. And then I've noticed more and more, you've got guys who are promoting, like Mike Rashid has been promoting overtraining. As if it's a good thing, but he's going back and he's doing Bulgarian light and calling it overtraining, and it's like you're stealing an already existing training system, changing the name to overtraining, and then promoting it. Well, training a heavy exercise every day isn't anything new. It's not revolutionary. People have been doing it for a long time. Just bodybuilders aren't aware of it because they don't really seem to follow what goes on in the strength and conditioning world. They're outside of the loop on the science. Or even worse, and you got people like C.T. Fletcher, who's like, ain't no such goddamn motherfucking thing as overtraining, you poop butt motherfuckers, when he says all that. And C.T.'s one of those guys who, I shake my head when I see that, when I hear him say that, because he's actually entertaining. He's one of the more entertaining guys in YouTube fitness. The guy's pretty funny. He's interesting to listen to because he's funny. But I see him as an entertainer more than anything else. But when to say things like that is simply not true. And the scary part, you look at a lot of the guys who follow these different methods and they're still weak, who are being thrown into this whole idea that there's no such thing as overtraining. They're training under these systems with this really high volume training, and you'll see the people then on YouTube and they struggle to even deadlift 500 pounds with a belt with good form. Come on, guys. I mean, they're saying there's no such thing as overtraining, but they're still not training clearly very effectively yet. I mean, if they're not even able to lift anything. It's just an interesting phenomenon there. But let's discuss the reality of it, because first of all, when you say there is no such thing as overtraining, it's documented in the scientific literature. It's been studied in pro athletes for decades. It is something sports physicians can diagnose as a medical condition. Overtraining isn't something that you do. It's a physical state that your body reaches. All right, it is a physical state from chronic fatigue of your body, your muscular system, your nervous system, from excessive amounts of training that you can't recover from for prolonged periods of time. It's actually possible to train in a way that you can't recover from for short periods of time and benefit from it. When you do it too long, it becomes overtraining syndrome. And when it becomes overtraining syndrome, sometimes you actually have to be hospitalized for it, meaning it can cause organ damage. It can cause problems. It could damage your kidneys. I mean, there are problems associated with it. And when you've reached an overtraining state, you start getting distinct warning signs. Blood pressure stays elevated, resting heart rate goes up, your strength starts going down. You start getting intense muscle cramps that will usually start in places like the lower back or the hamstrings. Will start happening when you're resting, when you're sleeping at night. There are characteristics that give it away, but it is real, it is diagnosable, it's a real medical condition. I mean, to say that there's no such thing as overtraining would be like saying there's no such thing as cancer. Well, I'm pretty sure there's people in the hospital right now with cancer. Pretty real. You're dealing with the same thing. It's a diagnosable medical condition. And it's just absurd for people to say that. Now, where are they getting that from? When you're dealing with novice lifters, you're dealing with noobs, what people need to understand is that your strength is directly tied to your work capacity. Strength is directly tied to work capacity. So, the stronger you are, the more tonnage you are capable of generating per minute in a workout. Meaning someone who's twice as strong can generate twice as much tonnage. They can squat twice as much weight over a 5-minute period in a workout or a 10-minute period. They can deadlift twice as much weight per set. Their 10 rep max is twice as high as someone else who's half the strength's 10 rep max. Your body has a finite recovery ability, and while when you train and your work capacity goes up, your recovery goes up, but it's not in a linear amount, meaning it is the stronger you get, the easier it is for you, the amount of workload that you are physically capable of generating to start exceeding what you are physically capable of recovering from. And the stronger you get, the easier it is to reach that threshold, the less it takes. Because your perceived exertion is going to be lower for the same amount of tonnage. You know, when you deadlift 500 pounds for 3 or 4 reps, a 350 pound deadlift seems pretty light. But to someone that 350 is their max, that's everything that they have. So the perception is different, but the recovery pattern may not be much different. Meaning, yeah, someone whose max is 400, 350 is they're going to have a recovery from it, but someone whose max is 500 lifting 350 is still going to have a recovery pattern. They're going to recover slightly easier from it because their work capacity is higher, but it doesn't always match with perceived exertion. So yeah, the stronger you get, the easier it becomes to overtax your recovery. And noobs are just basically too weak to spend a lot of time worrying about overtraining. Someone who's been in the gym only 6 months, it's very difficult to push them hard enough on the big heavy exercises for them to overtrain. It's just unlikely to happen. It can be done. You can force someone to do it, but most people aren't going to want to train hard enough to do that. Not at that strength level, because they're going to have to put in a lot of extra time at the gym to pull that off. You know, they're going to have to come in and squat for 10 sets, 3 or 4 days a week before it even starts to become a real risk for them. They're just not strong enough to generate that much fatigue. They just aren't. They can't do that much workload without expending a lot of time in the gym. So it's not really a concern, and that's where the idea starts to come from. But the more advanced you get, yeah, the easier it is to overtrain, because for you, big heavy tonnages have a lower perceived exertion, and you don't realize that you can push yourself beyond that threshold easier and easier the stronger you get and the more used to working out that you get, because it just becomes habit, and it's something you can lose track of how much training you're actually doing. And yeah, that's where it becomes a much, much bigger problem, but it is very real. Now, this whole concept of the other thing that people are throwing out there is that overtraining is a good thing. Well, the confusion they have is that they're confusing two very, very, very different things. They're confusing overreaching with overtraining. Overreaching is when you train beyond what your body is capable of recovering from before your next workout. All right. So, for example, if you were to come in and let's say you wanted to work on your weighted chin-ups, you wanted to grow your biceps and your lats more, and you come in and you do weighted chin-ups every day, and you start exceeding your maximum recoverable volume. And that might take a week, it might take 2 weeks, it might take 3 weeks, but eventually you're going to start reaching a point with those to where you start exceeding what you can recover from by pushing it to its limit. You're going to stop recovering eventually, and you're going to stop growing. Now, people need to remember, you can grow from workout to workout even if you train again before you're completely recovered. But if you keep it up in the long term, that fatigue will accumulate. In the short term, if you do it for short periods of time and then you back off and let your body recover, that's what we call an overreaching, underreaching model. That actually is a really good way to break through plateaus. Meaning if you've been stuck at a given strength, and that strength is always tied to muscle mass, meaning the stronger you get, if you're drug-free, the stronger you get, the bigger you are going to get. It's unavoidable. Drugs can throw a wrench in that sometimes, but for people who are clean, people who are either completely drug-free or very, very moderate users of any anabolic drug, there's a very, very strong correlation there. So when you stall on your ability, and I don't mean strength, I don't mean your 1 rep max, I mean your 8 rep max. If you can only bench press 205 for 8 reps and you've been stuck there for a few months, that is stalling. That strength stall is going to hurt your progress, but there can be a point to where you can push by overreaching, pushing beyond that, increasing your workloads and tonnages beyond what you can handle to where you'll force your body to have to adapt. But it won't fully adapt to that until you back down. So some people are promoting that idea of the really high frequency training, again, hitting an exercise or a lift 5 or 6 days a week and then calling that overtraining, but it's not. And that doesn't even automatically mean overreaching. It's only overreaching if your total workload is exceeding your recovery ability. It's actually not that hard to come in and hit a training max on a squat every day. There are people who do it year round without backing off because they don't actually overreach doing it. And again, with Bulgarian light style training, deloads actually aren't always needed. So, I mean, it really depends. But this idea is that, pushing beyond your recovery ability, that's not overtraining, that's overreaching. But it also has to be accompanied with the underreaching, because if you don't do that, what happens? You eventually will reach an overtrained state and you will lose progress. You will stall and you will regress. It will set you back. It's not desirable. And that's the confusion. That's the problem, is that people are promoting planned overreaching as overtraining when it's not. You don't want it to reach overtraining. If it reaches overtraining, you're in trouble. And using the wrong terms creates confusion, because then something that is understood in sports sciences and by sports physicians, medical doctors who specialize in athletes, overtraining is an understood phenomenon. And they're confusing a medical term with a training term, but they're using the incorrect training term. And it creates a big cluster fucking confusion for anyone trying to listen in, because some people are going to listen to what the doctors and coaches who work with athletes are saying, and they're going to get that confused with what a bunch of numbskulls on YouTube are saying, because they're using the words differently, and it's going to create confusion. And I really wish these guys wouldn't do that. It's being done as a marketing hype. And what it really does is it confuses the fuck out of people. There's already existing terms for this that are used in the sports world. You don't need to change the terms around for marketing. All it does is create confusion and then make people sound ignorant as fuck when they talk to other people. Because then people say things like, oh yeah, I'm doing overtraining. And then you sound like a fucking retard when you talk to a coach, like a coach who works with football players, or a strength and conditioning coach, or a medical doctor who works with athletes. You say that and he thinks you're fucking stupid. You guys see the problem there? Alright guys, but the reality of it is that overtraining is a real thing, and this whole idea of marketing overtraining is not actually overtraining. It's just planned overreaching with then a phase of underreaching after it. That's called dual factor recovery. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.